For the over 300 validated passengers on the ill-fated Abuja-Kaduna train, Monday, March the 28th, 2022 may forever linger. Passengers' confusion grew when the train scheduled for arrival at 7:45 p.m. did not, but rather than touch down, their train had been attacked, and by the time the dust was settled, at least 8 of them had been killed, while others sustained gunshot wounds.
They speak different language, not Fulani, not Hausa, and they are not even matured enough. They are children like 18 to 20 years. They are small children.
All of a sudden we started hearing guns, and I was shot on my legs, and after that I don't know what's happening.
The agents of sorrow did not stop at that, whisking away some of the passengers. In less than 24 hours, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, had made an appearance. His promise is to use this incident as a lead to improve the security architecture generally in the country.
It also reinforces our own belief that we must continue to provide the kind of security and surveillance that is required on the rail tracks. And that, of course, is something that we're very actively doing.
When he visited, the Chief of Army Staff promised to not just secure the release of the victims, but also punish the assailants.
This is dastardly acts, but I'd like to assure you that those behind it will not go unpunished.
In the days and months that follow, families of the victims cry out for help and, in emotion-laden voices, beg for their release. The managing director of the Bank of Agriculture was the first to taste freedom after 9 days in captivity. About 2 months after, the second batch of 11 was released on June the 11th. 3 were freed on July the 5th. And by August 19, 40 of the victims have joined their families. Wednesday, October the 5th came with the cheering news of the freedom of the last batch of 23. With that, all in captivity are now free. But the other leg of the promise is one many Nigerians still wait to see fulfilled, which is the arrest and punishment of the attackers. Timothy Crown, Adiribigbe, Channels Television News.
It's been 6 months, 1 week. Come to an end, thanks to the support from the federal government through the office of the Chief of Defense Staff. We were able today to go into the bush and bring back the remaining 23 families. Finally, not through our making, but because of somebody that betrayed the community and the government. That's the person of Tukur Mamu, who did everything within his reach to thwart the efforts the government has put in place, all in his interest. As you all know, he's in the hands of the government now. But Alhamdulillah, all the family members are back. The bandits never asked for money at the issue, but he put money issue into the whole thing and derailed the process and kept everybody for the past 6 months. We just parted away with about $200,000 US. Thank God the CDS took this upon himself, put in place a committee that never asked for one kobo. Every sacrifice being done so far has been personal towards ensuring the release of the victims. I'm happy to tell you that I worked with credible members of the highest order. If I have my way, all of them will be given a national honor because we had to risk our life, went into the bush, slept in the bush, had the complaints of these people, even though we knew what they did was wrong. but we had to engage them. And going forward, like I said, our security agencies must synergize their operations, and the government should open more rooms for engagement.
Just wow. Well, to weigh in on this matter, we're joined by Brigadier General Sani Usman, former Director, Army Public Relations. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's really tough for, several people who have heard this narrative. But, you are in a vantage position, in a manner of speaking, because you're still very much close to a lot of your colleagues who are still there. But given how this has panned out most recently, what are your impressions concerning what we heard and, thankfully, the eventual release of the remaining kidnapped victims?
I think the first thing, is the issue of gratitude and happiness that those in captivity are now released. And at the same time, commendation also for all those that have had hand in making it possible. Remember, the last batch was released in June, and yesterday, the the remaining batch were released. It was a painstaking effort, a lot of background thing, coordination and jointness. But the most impressive thing about it is that apart from the noticeable jointness and cooperation and synergy of efforts among the security agencies, we have now a renewed cooperation, not just among the military or the security forces, but also component of the Nigerian society. You have watched what he has said, and of course the release by Professor Usman yesterday. And believe me, you need to know the people behind the effort that was put in place by the Chief of Defense Staff. And you will appreciate the fact that Nigerians are wonderful people. They so love their country and they love humanity. Hence, the personal sacrifices, civilians who are not even affiliated with the government, or some people who have even left services like me, who are retirees, and they put in their best to ensure that these people are released. So it's something that is heartwarming and very commendable. And I will tell you that since 28th of March, when the unfortunate incident occurred, the following day, this machinery was set in motion. And, there were a lot of efforts, challenges, so to speak, and what have you. But at the end of it, just like a former Chief of Defense Staff used to say, that don't tell me how raw the sea was, but have the goods arrived. So I think the most important thing is the end result. And we need to appreciate that, and we need to commend that. And the good thing is that every step is being taken to ensure, they avert such things, and the people are being taken care of, and they will soon be reunited with their families.
Indeed, 6 months is a long time to be away from one's family under such harrowing conditions. I don't think that even people who do not, who have enemies, who wish that upon their enemy, that they go on a journey that was only supposed to take 2 hours at the most, and then it's taking them 6 months to get home to their families. And indeed, a lot of Nigerians can appreciate the joy that many families will feel, and they're thankful indeed that these people are back home safely. However, I'm just wondering how we're going to, how we're going to look at the circumstances right now in terms of those in terms of those, pardon my line of thoughts right now, in terms of those who are who asked for this ransom, who took these people, what were they hoping to achieve when they seized members of this, when they seized these people on the train? Do we have an idea now what they wanted?
Actually, on the basis of the findings and the intelligence gathered based on this 6 months effort, a lot of information has come to fore. And it is not something that should be discussed, actually, because I know other components of the security agencies are working on the intelligence gathered. Basically, the motivation and possibly the next line of action. But I can rest assure you that a lot is being done, and those people that perpetrate this act will definitely not go unpunished, despite the fact that there were a series of, assurances and what have you. Because it may interest you to know that this release was a combination of so many efforts by the various components, the military and the other components of the Nigerian society. So at a certain point, the military had to exercise restraint and what have you. So it does not in any way hamper, the normal operational activities of the military that is ongoing.
So restraint in what regard?
Well, you should understand that while you are negotiating, at the same time the military wants to, do the kinetic aspect of it, but of course you have to combine the non-kinetics. And whenever you are faced with a challenge of this nature, the best thing to do is to involve the various components of all the elements of national power. Basically, the natural and the social aspect of it. To what extent are you taking advantage of your population, and that is one of the staying powers. And we have seen it by involving some people in this country otherwise that have not been involved in the beginning. So, and to what extent are you taking advantage of the, the other aspect, the information, the military, the geography and technology. So these are the issues that, that were brought to bear. And each one of them, they have their own requirements, their own, operational procedures and what have you. But somehow you have to, collapse all for the betterment of the overall objective. So that is what I'm talking about.
Okay. What can you tell us about, because remember when the DSS arrested Mamu, they eventually then said, look, people should allow us to do our jobs. Now, there are different narratives about the role he played in all of this, and many, listening to, just before we came on air, the narrative that went on, how he appeared to have played some sort of negative role in all of this, how they never demanded money, but he came in and all sorts of things happened. So help us connect the dots here. How did all of this play out from your perspective?
Well, unfortunately, I don't want to comment on it simply because I think the case is in court and it will amount to sub judice if I talk about it. But the long and short of it is that you can see the difference when, a credible establishment joined the effort, in this rescue or rather release effort. The Chief of Defense Staff is a non-person. Almost most of his career life has been spent in the Northeast. He was the theater commander. Eventually, he moved to multinational joint task force, and in the wisdom of the president, made him the Chief of Defense Staff that coordinated, and they emphasize on, joint operations and jointness, not necessarily among the military, but the security agencies and the component of the Nigerian society. And that is one thing people should understand, that every other person in this country has a role to play. But of course, we should believe in the lead agencies, in any circumstances we found ourselves. The Department of State Security, state services are doing a marvelous job. You will be interested to know that they have been, supplying the necessary information too. But now, the missing dots now was the
issue of coordination and cooperation
Yeah,
and synergy.
and that's the part I was, even before that part, I was wondering. So, Pam, you'll talk about that soon, but what is it that could have happened? Because I know, I guess, while you were in the service, you usually will just sit back, review circumstances with a view to ensuring how could we do better where we didn't. So in this kind of case, why do you think help didn't come earlier than now?
What I want you to understand is the fact that I don't speak for them, but that notwithstanding, there were issues, you know, that require coordination. Take, for instance, the level of, you know, the level of one agency and another is not exactly the same. Therefore, you have to carry everybody, you know, on board. And in so doing, it requires painstaking effort, you know, coordinating so many things. And sometimes on the surface, you think that there is nothing that is going on, but meanwhile, beneath it, a lot is being going on. And basically, that is it. And I will rest assure you, by the time, as time goes, those people that are deeply involved in this release effort, by the time they start talking, you will understand and appreciate the fact that a lot is being done. So it is not a question of taking time. And like I told you earlier on, the most important thing is that these people have now been released. But most importantly, again, what are those mechanisms and machineries being put in place to ensure these infrastructures are secured so that people could use them? I'm talking about the train services. And how do we avert or do we prevent such reoccurrence? It is not just the kinetic aspect of it. You know, in dealing with insurgency, in dealing with terrorism, and of course, issue of banditry and kidnapping, there are other non-kinetic aspects that need to be done. And most importantly is the issue of good governance. What are those things that need to be done? And this, I believe the government is focusing on it, using the necessary agencies.
So is it that your point is the authorities need to let Nigerians know what measures they put in place to ensure or to let them know that that service is secure and can be used?
Yes, of course, every Nigerian would like to be reassured. In fact, they are waiting eagerly for the train services to be resumed. And of course, being, you know, sensitive to the flight of those that were in captivity, you know, it was not restored. But now we have passed that stage. Now the question is, how do we prevent such reoccurrence? And I know that a lot is being done to prevent that, and I believe the Nigerian Railway Corporation is giving assurance. But of course, they couldn't have been talking if they have not been talking to the various security agencies for such assurance. And beyond that, again, what level of support and cooperation are they getting from the government itself? Not necessarily the federal government, including, you know, the state government and the local government services. So now a lesson has been learned. A lesson has been learned, but what are those things that you are putting in place? And those things include, you know, taking everybody on board. Take, for instance, you know, information has it, the time they took, you know, and the distance they took before they carried out the operation. People know better. And the people that have not been engaged are now being constructively engaged to ensure that they report and, of course, they take part in securing whatever facilities we have in this country. So it's a kind of holistic thing, and I know that the government is doing the best it could to ensure that. And more so now they have shown the capacity to do these things as manifested by this committee led by the Chief of Defense Staff. I think we should give them the benefit of doubt.
All right. My colleagues have got questions for you.
Well, that's right, Chamberlain. Good morning, Brigadier General. Certainly a happy ending to this harrowing experience. Absolutely. 192 days spent in captivity, but we've had to pay prices to get to this point. 8 people were killed in that attack. We've had prison break that was related to that directly. We've had, you know, we've seen the victims being flogged. We've seen them make demands, ask for their family members to be released. We've seen even ransom. I mean, listening to an insider saying that they had to part with $200,000 really, and looking at just the quantum of that amount. So we've had to pay a lot of, price to get here. And that's some of them you can put a figure so you can identify. But what about the emotional trauma and all of that? I don't know if we've really dealt with or maybe tried to answer the question about why it had to take this long. I mean, I don't remember a hostage situation taking this long, 192 days, over 6 months. So maybe just to help people get closure, because, I mean, the prayer, the hope is that this will not happen again. I imagine promises can be made. Promises have been made in the past that this will not happen again. But really, did it have to take this long?
Well, you are putting so many things at the same time. The issue of taking long, I just addressed it a while ago, and is multiplicity of key players, being involved. Take, for instance, I talked about even among the security agencies, there are two components, the military and other security agencies. But beyond that, again, we have the combination of other components of the Nigerian society, individuals, that are not even, working directly for the government. Bringing them on board, it requires a lot of synergization and all the rest. And when you are dealing with terrorists, there is no absolute or certainty about that. There were so many negotiations. There were instances, they had to call it up. And, these people that are doing this effort, they need to be secured. And they had to be given assurance. So a lot of things. It is not as if, and I made mention of the fact that this unfortunate incident happened on the 28th of March. But I can tell you by 29th, they swung into action. And at the end of it, this is what we have. And I quite agree with you, irrespective of the trauma, nobody could have wished this kind of thing for his or her own enemy. Honestly, every Nigerian, well-meaning ones for that matter, were all traumatized. Nobody was sleeping because of the, harrowing experience of these people that have been in captivity for over 6 months. Now they are back. And we are talking about, even among the military that were trained for, to withstand, to fight wars, and there are issues of traumatic experience and what have you. So, and I know that is why up to now they have not been fully reunited with their family members. They had been in various medical facilities so that they would check their health status. But beyond that, there will be counseling, and I expect more of support in terms of to deal with this trauma. Not necessarily even the victim directly themselves, but even the families. How do you, relate with somebody that had been away for 6, months? And beyond that, remember there were even underage children. One of them was just barely 5 years old. So a lot of things we need to bring all the experts to ensure that all the necessary support is given. Then the third and the most important aspect is the fact that we need to ensure the circumstances that brought about this kind of brazen attack and the Western wanton destructions of lives and abduction of such a number of people should not be allowed to occur. And how do you do that? I had made reference of the synergy, the coordination and holistic approach. But most importantly, bringing people that hitherto were not being taken into consideration in, stemming these criminal activities or security challenges. Even the communities, the rail line has passed through, and of course the use of technology, and most importantly, good governance and ensuring that our local government system is working.
Well, I think it's a very important point, really. Saying that we need to bring in more people, the communities especially, and that leads me to my next question. Saying that these people were in captivity for 192 days, day in, day out, they maybe have had to eat, had to be attended to, hearing that someone even gave birth in captivity and all of that. And I wonder, what are we dealing with here? We always say terrorists, Boko Haram, but do we really have a handle on what we're dealing with for these people to be able to carry out such operation for 192 days? I mean, they had to get some sort of sustenance, food, supplies, and all of that for 192 days. And it looks like they were flourishing. So do we really have a handle on what we're dealing with right now? Perhaps that was the inclination you were trying to give by saying that we should get the communities involved. How were they able to thrive for that long? And I mean, it looked like they could have even gone longer than that. So do we really know what we're dealing with here? Are they just simple terrorists, or there's more to this?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm losing the last part of it, but I will tell you one thing, that with the benefit of hindsight, and I mentioned earlier on that, you know, the people that were involved in this release effort, they have learned so much, and they gathered so much information, and I can tell you we are putting our hands on it in the sense that with what is coming out, I think better steps will be taken. And I can rest assure you, there will be formal, you know, report and formal debriefing, which in fact it has started already, and the Chief of Defense Staff and the government have started taking some measures. So basically that is it. But beyond that, again, this has brought to the fore the need for a holistic approach, and all those people that are sitting on the fence that are taught that security is the government responsibility, they should have a rethink that everybody has a role to play in dealing with security challenges. Otherwise, it will engulf all of us. Now, take for instance the issue of the involvement of all those people that have hand in the release of the remaining, you know, kidnapped victims. You know, some of them, they were individuals, but they realized the need to serve their country, to serve humanity. When they are called upon, they did not even give any condition, and they know for sure they are going to deal with a deadly group, that there is every likelihood they may even lose their lives, just like the military does. So, but they made the sacrifice. So it requires, you know, the understanding and the support of all the components of Nigerian society to understand the fact that everybody has a role to play, to see to what extent can you contribute. And I made reference to the issues of the elements of national power, psychologically, information. But people will assume by the time you are denigrating the security or the military, you know, you thought that you are doing the best thing. You know, no. They need all the support, they need all the encouragement they can get. And in fact, given the fact that we are religiously, you know, inclined nation, they need all the prayers they can get. So let us be positive. And with that, we can be able to understand and appreciate and discover, you know, the latent talents or not necessarily talent, but the blessing each and every one of us has, because we are uniquely blessed somehow, you know, to contribute our best to national development, peace and security in this country. But we should endeavor to use it more positively. And of course, for those who are statutorily responsible for leadership and securing us, they should discover, they should understand. Right. We should not in any way be sacrificing the ability to serve with willingness to serve. We should always get the right people to do the right thing.
We're due for a break now, but when we return, a couple of more issues to raise. How do we ensure that the rail tracks, generally the infrastructure, is secure moving forward such that we can begin operations and ensure it doesn't happen again? How do we ensure that such violent groups do not spring up, or wherever they are nipped in the bud, as they say? We'll continue that in a moment. Please stay with us. Certainly cheery news when that news broke yesterday that the remaining 23 hostages had been released, but a lot to learn from. And we're continuing our conversation with former Director, Army Public Relations, Brigadier General Sani Usman, who joins us live from our Abuja studio. Well, my colleague, Bukola, would like to jump in now. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Kadi. Good morning, Brigadier General. And I imagine...
Good morning.
the flood of relief in the hearts of the family members of those who have just been released. And as Kayode said, it has been a Pyrrhic victory, you know, considering the journey leading up to this landing point. I calculated the amount quoted by that insider, $200,000 that they had to part with, and that's about 86 million naira. And not to mention, you know, the other sums that had been parted with when the former negotiator was in the picture. And, you know, that brings me to the question of, or the debate over ransom payment. I wonder if this amount that are in the hands of the kidnappers leaves you with a sense of helplessness about how, you know, this whole business is fortifying kidnappers. And the argument on the flip side also that if ransom payment is criminalized, it will leave family members without that option that would be critical to saving the lives of their family members who have been kidnapped. Where are you in all of this?
Well, I think one of the things that make kidnapping to thrive in this country is the fact that a ransom is always being paid. And of course, you cannot help but to do that simply because if your loved one is being abducted by bandits or kidnappers or terrorists, the option because of the present circumstances we found ourselves, you said, but you know, it's counterproductive in the sense that you are arming the criminals, you know, because whatever they are going to do, the starting point is to further, you know, arm them because they usually purchase weapons with some of this money. Hardly they invest it, or even though we are conscious of the fact that there is war economy in which a lot of people are benefiting from these security challenges that we're having. You know, the arms supplies, the drug supplies, the information, you know, the informants and what have you. But beyond that, again, there are some group of unscrupulous elements that even help in investing these monies for them. Because I cannot imagine, you know, a bandit or a terrorist to be moving about with heavy amount of money, you know, that runs into millions of naira on him in the bush, because most of them are in the bush. So these are really issues that require in-depth pursuit so that, you know, they said when you follow the money, you definitely get to answer, get the answer to some of these questions. So this is it. But the ultimate thing, actually, the ransom payment encourage or rather fuel this criminality. But we have no choice. But I don't know now to what extent these issues have been, you know, addressed. But then, in these circumstances, I have no idea whatsoever that, you know, money has changed hand or any other, you know, thing has been changed. I believe over time, the government will make a statement about it, and those people that are involved, deeply involved, will definitely recount their own personal experiences and their own perspective about it. You know, as time goes on, there is nothing that is sitting under the sun. But the most important thing is that, like I said earlier, we really need to appreciate the effort of the Chief of Defense Staff and the entire, you know, committee that brought about this, you know, these abductees back, you know, to humanity after over 6 months. And then again, how do we build on that? You know, given the lesson learned, given what we have found out, given what we have seen in respect of this, you know, criminal elements, to what extent do we stop this, you know, security challenges, the railway attack, not even just the railway attack, but attacking communities and other facilities, you know, so that Nigeria will be in peace just like it used to be before.
And following the money would also be critical when you consider the terrorism financing law, and you wonder what is being done in that regard, if that law is being invoked you know, to tackle the payment of ransom to kidnappers and all of that. That's another conversation on its own, but perhaps we'll leave that for another time. I noted that you also talked about using non-kinetic means, to fight banditry and insurgency. And I wonder if you are getting a sense that that is being done as much as possible so that we don't continue to treat the symptoms rather than the root cause. I know you talked about how the federal government may be doing that, but, there's also been an aspect of the conversation from state governments, asking Nigerians to weigh the performance of subnational governments rather than the federal government. I know you are from the north, so do you get a sense that that non-kinetic means is being deployed by state governments in the north, such that participation in criminal activity like terrorism and kidnapping can be discouraged as much as possible?
Well, if you are talking about that, is being employed, but to what extent it is successful or they are doing the right thing is entirely a different thing altogether. But most importantly, nobody should work in isolation. The three tiers of government should work in concert with each other in dealing with the security challenges, both the kinetic and the non-kinetic effort. I made reference to the issue of good governance. Now, bulk of the problems we have are now being pushed to just two tiers of government, the federal and state governments. And what happened to the local government system? Because bulk of all these problems, they emanated from, rural communities, and they, they were allowed to escalate to the extent that they have become not just just a national issue, but in fact it is a regional issue because they have their tentacles across the Nigerian borders. It will interest you to know that there are so many people involved, not necessarily in this country, in respect of all the security challenges that we're having. So we have to put our acts together to ensure that, every component of the Nigerian society is brought on board to make sure that we trace even the financiers and all those people that are backing either within the country or outside the country and, bring them to book. But in so doing, again, we look at some of the remote and immediate causes of some of this problem. What is the level of the economic, empowerment of an average citizen of this country so that he or she has a sense of belonging to contribute, in a way so that he or she's, his or her own value system are not compromised. Take, for instance, if somebody is hungry, there is every likelihood, the best thing, I think the best thing that readily comes to mind is the issue of, food. But anybody with food definitely may not necessarily give him that food free of charge. He may have an alternate, ulterior motive. So we should try as much as possible to ensure that Nigerians are given sense of belonging. They should have those basic necessities of life so that all these criminal elements will not entice them.
Okay. General, I'd like you to help me reconcile this. You've talked about how we got these hostages, we secured their release through negotiations. You've also mentioned how you think that the Nigerian government is also going to punish the people who carried out this act. People know that when you negotiate, you give something to get something back. What did we promise them? And I know this might be delicate, but how do you reconcile when you say, we negotiated their release, but they're not going to go unpunished? They seem at variance.
Yeah, of course, it's easier said than done. But the long and short of it is that the bargaining chip, one of them is out. The hostages are no longer with them. So what are you doing with the information about the perpetrators of this crime? And I'm not privy to some of, the, in-depth effort and what's negotiated. But the most important thing is that these people are out, and possibly it could be the issue of, okay, the government will not carpet bomb them so long as they release, because up to now, and continuously so, the Nigerian security forces have the upper hands against these criminals. That is one thing you should understand. And they are doing the best, they could to ensure that even without this issue, I am so sure at the end of the day, they will still be successful. But the most important thing now that these people have been released, so you cannot allow somebody who has killed someone who has held somebody in captivity. The issue of justice has to come into play, because part of the problems that we are having about these security challenges is the issue of, the criminal justice system in this country. People do things and without their consequences. And, so they continue to do it. Let there be, justice, so that it will serve as deterrence and people will be given sense of belonging. Not necessarily justice to even the victims, but even to the perpetrators of the crime, so that they will realize that it doesn't pay.
All right, we'll have to let it go at that point. And just as you also indicated, hopefully the authorities will do what they can, because if we're dealing with something beyond the borders of this country, it requires engagements at that level with other nationals, other governments as well. But well, thank you for coming on. As always, Brigadier General Sani Usman, former Director, Army Public Relations. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.